Tonight, we're going to be talking about letter writing campaigns as an advocacy method in hosting political forums. My name is Justina Erpelding. I'm with Every Child California, and I work on the ECE Voices program that we have here. And tonight, we're going to be presenting together, Jenny and I. So I'm going to have Jenny introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Mensch. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator with Every Child California.
We're happy that you all have decided to spend your evening with us. So thank you for that. If you've been to our trainings before, you know that we like a little interaction. So I'll be asking you a couple questions. If you're more comfortable, please feel free to use the chat function. Just click on there and put your answer in, and Jenny and I will read it. Feel free to lift your hand icon and we will call on you to share your stories. And that's what we're going to start with first, is talk a little bit about what piqued your interest in joining this training tonight, with it being about letter writing campaigns, if that's something that you have been involved with before, or if it's something that you're interested in doing or hosting a forum. So I'm going to open up the chat and see what you guys have to say about that. Make sure you're unmuted if you want to join in.
I know that when I was with Parent Voices, I had parents write their testimonies of like for the fees, and how they were able to save money during the pandemic when they waived the fees, and how they were able to like buy a car or go to school with that extra money. So I had them write like personal letters, but I would like to learn, like, if I did another letter writing campaign, because now I still work with Parent Voices, but now I want to kind of just, with our agency, with like the true cost of care, and like how to go about having parents write letters, or even the teachers write letters, on how important it is. Because I know we're safe through 2025, but after that, we're going to have to make another proposal, or like convince the governor and the legislator that we still need money.
Yes, that's very true. So in this training, you'll definitely get some step-by-step guidance on how to put together and get all the support that you need, and different techniques on sending in those letters. So that's great to hear. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the agenda, but feel free, if you want to join in that conversation, to put it in the chat and we'll share it with everyone. So we're going to cover in this training tonight how to find your representative, because that's going to be the basic step. When you're sending in letters, you need to send it to the representative that has been elected in your area, because they're the ones that are allowed to speak up on your behalf. And if you could accidentally do all this work and send it to the wrong representative, it goes in the trash can. So we're going to start with that basic step. And it is something that we've covered in Legislation 101, Part 1 and Part 2. And all of those recordings are available on our YouTube channel, of Every Child California's YouTube channel. So if you need a refresher on any of those, feel free to check out that channel and watch those videos, and there'll be step-by-step guidance on how to find your legislator, along with a lot of other information. We'll cover what a letter writing campaign is, and other types of campaigns under that umbrella of letter writing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to set up and host a political forum. And the reason that we're talking about that tonight is because, especially if you're going to be doing it on behalf of ECE Voices or any nonprofit, there are very specific rules involved with not looking like you are partial towards one candidate over another. And then what's happening next with ECE Voices Foundation's training. So first, we're going to talk about, when you do a letter writing campaign, who to send that letter to. So it's so important, like I said earlier, that you know who your legislator is, because that is who is allowed to speak up on your behalf. A lot of times when you go in and you say, I want to contact you, they'll ask you for your address. I'll give you that link in a little bit, but there is a link online that allows you to put in your address, and it tells you exactly who your assembly member is and who your senator is. That's who you want to contact. If you are going to bring up an overall like general issue or even specific issues in your area for ECE, then you're going to send it to your representative. They may not be authoring a bill for that particular issue, but they are the people who are authorized to speak on your behalf. So you can even tell them if there is a bill going through that they're not an author of and say, this will really help us, because once the bill hits the floor of either the Assembly or the Senate, when they're all together to discuss it, they'll be familiar with it and can, support it on your behalf. And then it's important to know the different committees that we use. And it's nice with ECE issues, usually we're just going to be in education and human services, both on Senate and Assembly. I'll give you all that information so you know how to find it. But the chairs of those committees are important contacts to keep. Those are people that you would reach out to on issues that are going to go through their committee. So if you're familiar with a particular budget issue, and you know who the budget chair is, let's say for subcommittee on education, so that's money that's going to flow through your programs, the first issue has to go through that committee, then you can reach out to that committee chair and say, these are really important issues to us, and this is why. And just like Patricia was saying earlier, when we're looking at a lot of these deadlines for June 30th of 2025, and then the funding's gone, it's never too early to start working on that, to say, hey, we need to look at a structure that's going to allow this to continue funding past the expiration date. It's important to also know who your local leaders are, and even a quick Google search, if you put in your address, will tell you, but there are websites out there that will tell you exactly who your leaders are. Your boards of supervisors are very important people to know who they are, so that you can send letters to them as well on the local level. It's also important when you're putting together a campaign that has to do with a specific issue that you are familiar with the legislative session in the budget session. You can always send letters in and they will read them on your behalf, but if you can time it with their session, then you maybe have a better chance of creating a change within that legislative timeline or that budget timeline. So legislative schedules, they are in their office locally August through December. So maybe then you would plan a big letter writing campaign and send it to their local office. You wouldn't send it to the Capitol. The Capitol is the best time to send them letters there is January through June. Just know that in January, they're just returning back to their Capitol offices. They're creating new bills and they're getting back up to speed on everything that's happened since they were gone. So it's going to take them a minute, but you definitely could start in January. And there's always staffers in their local offices. So even if you send it there, a staffer is going to get it. And then the budget runs on a fiscal year. Like we were talking about, the funding for many of the wins that you had last year are going to go through June 30th of 2025. That is the fiscal year. So new fiscal year starts July 1. And so you want to keep that in mind when you're talking about these budget issues and when to send letters letting the legislators know about these particular issues that you want money for, right? Or continued funding for. So here's the link that I was telling you about, and we will always follow up with an email that gives you the links and a link to a resource page that will have this out there for you so that you can just easily click on it and put your address in to find who your representative is. Remember, it's so important to do that because if you do all this work to put together a letter writing campaign and send it to the wrong person, it could end up in the trash. So you don't want that. Find out who your representative is because your vote matters to them. They do truly care about their community as well. And they're more likely to listen to a constituent than someone who's outside of their area. And then I'm just going to share a screenshot here. I know I've shared this before in the past, but this is what it looks like when you click on that link. it opens up an area for you to put your address in. And the picture on the bottom is the next page when you can see I put my address in here and it told me that Kevin McCarty and Angelique Ashby, those are my representatives for where I live at my house. Okay, so you might have a different representative for your home than you do for your business. Just depends on who you're looking to get the support from, maybe both. And then those links at the bottom where it's in blue for Kevin and Angelique, those are clickable links. Those take me out to their websites. On their websites, you can find all their contact information at their capital office and at their local office. You can see what bills they're authoring. You can find a wealth of information. So I always say bookmark those and keep them handy. On the next page, I want to share with you a different way to go about finding their information, and that's going through the Assembly or the Senate websites. I have them on here, and again, we'll make all of this available to you. You can see it looks a little different than their regular websites look like they're real pretty. Well, this is through the Assembly website, so it's like down to business, and it's going to give you all of the basic information that you need. It does give you a link out to their website. You can see that there at the top. But a nice thing is that it shows you what committees they're on. It's so important to know if they're on a committee, because then you know if they're going to be on a committee that's hearing a bill that you want them to pay close attention to and support. So it's just additional information for you that can help you make a big difference in supporting a bill. So here, when I clicked on committee membership, I put a blue arrow there so you can't miss it, that you can see that he's Kevin McCarty, who is my representative, sits on the budget committee. So that's a big one, right? Like if I want to talk to him about important financial issues that are affecting childcare in California, not only is he my representative, but he's sitting on the budget committee making these decisions. He's also on the education committee, which is where our bills for anything that has to do with ECE goes through. He sits on the health committee. Some of our stuff goes through health. Most of our stuff goes through human services. So not quite as helpful, and public safety really isn't where any of our bills go. But if we go down to subcommittees, you can see that he sits on the subcommittee for education finance. So not only does he look at the overall amount of money that California has to spend, but he also is in another subcommittee that looks at how much money in total can we spend on education. So that's where you fight for your piece of the pie. That's those, a lot of the hearings that we go to the education subcommittee hearings to say, we want our piece of the pie. So this would be a great contact for me to say, I need money for continued funding for all the wins that we had last year. So I strongly suggest using those links and, bookmarking them and checking them out to see who your representative is and what committees they sit on, because that can be so useful. I'm going to switch gears a little bit in this next slide to talk about bills themselves. Now, bills is something that we covered in depth in our Legislation 101 Part 1 and 2. So again, on YouTube, on Every Child California's channel, we will have those available for you to go and have like a review of. But I wanted to let you know that a resource, which is this link, takes you out to a website that California has created for the public to use. And what you can do is look up specific information about bills. So if you're like, I want to do a letter writing campaign on a specific bill, but I don't know where it's at, you can use this link and put the bill number in or do a keyword search to pull up the bill. And on here where it says House location, about halfway down, it says it's in the Senate. So you would know that letters need to go to the Senate for that if you're not going to send it to your specific legislator. But that also will tell you what committee it is, which is going to be more helpful. So for example, it could say Senate Committee Education. And then you know that you need to look up who the chairs are of the Education Committee, and that's going to be your resource. So at this point, we're going to switch gears again a little bit. I'm going to hand it over to Jenny and have her give you some more details on how the letter writings work.
Thanks, Justina. So we're going to need all of that information that Justina shared about finding our representative and getting to know them a little bit when we think about things like our letter writing campaign or hosting forums. So first, we're going to do a deep dive into why could we do a letter writing campaign? And the number one reason that we always think about is sending a clear message to our decision makers and getting our word out there to those representatives. But another great side effect of the letter campaign is that it actually informs the public of the issue. As you're out there trying to get people to take action and join your letter writing campaign, you're also sharing your message with the people in your community beyond just your representatives, which is really great. And the letter campaigns are all about the volume of letters, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. Our elected officials really do understand the importance of listening to their constituents, as Justina said. They don't even necessarily want to hear from you what the bill is about, right? They know all the information already, or they can access that information from their staffers. What they really want to know is, how do those decisions affect you? And how does the legislation affect you? And writing letters is a relatively inexpensive form of advocacy. If you're doing print letters, it costs the cost of printing and mailing, but you can also email them or submit them to the representatives' online portals. So when we're thinking about how many letters do we need to write in order to influence an official or representative, it kind of varies depending on the level at which that representative is at. So when you're thinking about your local area, your county board of supervisors, generally, if they receive 20 to 30 letters about an issue, that could influence them and the decisions that they make. But if you're looking at your state representatives, state senate, or even nationwide elected officials, the general rule is that hundreds of letters are required. And that's just because if you think about the number of people that those representatives serve, right? For your local county board of supervisors, they're serving a very small localized population, but our statewide officials serve many more people. And so they require more letters to represent our messages that we have out there. And this is where it kind of gets a little bit scary, I think, when it comes to letter writing campaigns. But the general rule of thumb is that you need to contact 30 to 100 times more people in order to get enough letters. So one of my roles here at Every Child California is I do a lot of our communications and marketing. And so that's what I think about when I think about this letter writing campaign. So when I send emails out to everybody on our listserv, which say that's 5,000 people, 25% of them will open that email. And like 2% of them will actually click and register for whatever event I've mailed out. And so that's kind of the same when we're thinking about this letter writing campaign. You might reach out to 1,000 people with a social media post or an email that you send. But maybe if they're people who you have a good relationship with and support your cause, you could get anywhere up to 50% of those people responding and reading more about your letter writing campaign. So that's about 500. And then probably 2 to 10% of those people will move forward and actually write a letter. So that's like 10 to 30 people might write a letter if you've reached out to 1,000 people. So it sounds very daunting, but that's one of the reasons that we think that joining networks or coalitions is very important. Also using social media to get our word out to more people. And then just kind of some creative out of the box ways of thinking to reach more people with our campaigns. So when you're going to set up a letter campaign, there's a little bit of work you need to do before you put this out to your community. First thing, something that I'm sure that you all are very familiar with, Justina has mentioned it in every single training that I've been at, is diving into the issue that you care about, gathering credible information, gathering statistics, and sharing those personal stories to build that strong foundation for your campaign. Because remember, not only are we trying to influence those representatives, but we're trying to influence other people to take action of writing a letter or even just signing a letter to send to that representative, right? And so we want to really connect and put out messages that resonate with our community members that will make them want to write a letter. And one of the ways that you can do that is by offering sample letters. So you can showcase different sample letters for the different audiences and perspectives, and consider offering multiple different versions to have a broader reach. So, you know, when I said sort of creative thinking when we're coming to a letter campaign, you know, maybe you want to focus on letters from parents, but I would also include letters from other educators or other program directors or other people who might be involved in providing services to those families, and connecting with more different types of people in your community who are working with those children and families that you serve, and then offering letters that might resonate with each of those different types of groups. And then get to know your target when you're writing those sample letters, researching those elected officials through the channels that Justina shared with us. You can understand their stance on the issue and their voting history and what might resonate with them. And now from the campaign perspective, you can put all this information together to be able to share those details with your community. But one thing, I've been on the community side of things before, where I've been asked to participate in letter writing campaigns. And when I was doing that on behalf of a different nonprofit organization that I worked for, my boss wanted to know who supported if it was a bill, they wanted to know who supported the bill, but also who opposed the bill before my organization was willing to sign a letter and put that forth to our representative as well. And so the more information that you, as the person who's creating this campaign, can gather and provide to the people who you want to write the letters, the easier it will be for them to be able to put those letters together. So then when we're setting it up, we have all of our research, we have our sample letters, we're ready to go. So we need to get the word out that we're doing this letter writing campaign. Many of us with our centers may have email lists with our different families that we work with. We may be part of different coalitions, professional organizations, networking groups that we can get the word out. If you're going to an event, you could set up a letter writing station in a strategic location, or you could even host your own event to bring people out, share with them what the issues are that you would like to get out to the representatives, and have a party so that everybody can write their letters together. So then you have to consider, how are you going to get those letters delivered to the targeted officials? And, you know, here we've said, encourage the writers to mail their letters directly to the targeted officials. And that's a really valuable step because what it does is it creates more buy-in among those people who've written the letters, right? Because they've had to take that additional step to mail it. They're more tied to that letter, and they might be more excited to look for the outcome and write more letters in the future. However, that can be a little bit difficult if you're trying to find out, you know, what are the results of your letter writing campaign. If you leave people on their own to go mail it on their own, you don't know if they have mailed it in. And maybe that's where your campaign is. You want to give people that agency to mail those letters in. That's a great pro. It's also way easier on you in terms of time and resources if the letter writers mail in their own letters, right? But if you collect those letters and you send them in, then you'll know how many went out. You'll know that they went to the right place, and you'll know those results that you can share with the officials and the letter writers. And Justina, I believe that you had some information for us about submitting them electronically.
Yes, I was gonna jump in and add a couple more things here for you guys. That, you know, Every Child California does a lot of these sort of campaigns, and we rely a lot on using social media and using emails. So if you follow us on social media, you'll know that last week we sent out an email and on social media a request for people to contact the governor. And how we did it was we gave a link to the governor's contact page, because with him, there is no direct email. You do have to go through his page. So we wanted to make it a one click, like here, it'll take you right to it, because you got to make it as easy as possible for people because we're all busy, right? And then we go ahead and prepare a template so that they can just highlight, copy, and paste into their own letterhead, or just paste into the contact form on the governor's website. Now, on doing it that way, I can't track who's done it. I can maybe see how many people have clicked on my email, things like that. So like Jenny was saying, if you need results, like you need to be able to get feedback on that. You're going to have to communicate with your folks to say, did you send that in? Otherwise, you'll need to be in control of mailing that in. But there are different ways that Jenny is referring to of sending in letters. And one of them is through the portal. So this again is going to be on our YouTube channel on Legislation 101 Part 1 and 2. But if there is a piece of legislation that you want to support, for the state of California and the committees to count that as support, you do have to use their official California legislative portal. And you have to set up an account. It's very, very easy. And on our part, for Every Child California, for the bills that we support and sponsor, we'll send letters, but that doesn't mean that you are restricted to just doing the ones that we send templates for. You can write your own story up of how that bill is affecting your program or will affect your program if it becomes a law, and you can send it yourself through the portal. They accept letters on individuals' behalf. They accept it on businesses' behalf, and they allow you to send it in on someone else's behalf if they're having a hard time accessing it or if they don't know how to use it, you want to help them out. So I just want to make sure and point that out, because if you're looking to be counted on a very particular bill as a support, then you have to send it through that portal. Now, a letter writing campaign is more of like a, wow, we just got 100 letters in the mail, we better pay attention to our constituents, right? So it's not really that like, I want you to support just this bill. It's I want to get your attention and I want to get it now, right? And so Jenny is talking to you about how to make that work in all different forms. And I can tell you that one of our members goes to a conference every year and sets up a postcard station and has people sign a postcard that's already filled out and then mails it all in herself. So there's an idea for you as well. I'll pass it back over to you, Jenny.
Yeah, thanks, Justina. And I just wanted to confirm that portal that you mentioned, that's if you're writing letters specifically about a bill.
Yes, that portal is only for you can't even get past the screen. You have to type in the bill number. So it's only support or opposition of a bill.
So if you're doing letter campaigns that are raising sort of general awareness about some of the issues that we face in the field, you wouldn't use that portal. You would go directly through those representatives.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And then making sure
Wait, did I
we
move?
skipped it a little bit. That's okay. One of the important things about letter campaigns is that making sure, I mean, it's exciting. You want people to get involved and to feel really tied to it. And so maintaining that communication with the officials and the letter writers about updates, you know, if I've submitted a letter and I've given it to an organization to submit on my behalf, I want to know what happened to that letter. And I want to know if we've heard back from those officials. So make sure you keep in contact and you keep track of those people who are participating. Even if it's something where you aren't getting updates, sending a simple thank you can help keep people excited and ready to participate in your next advocacy opportunity. And personalize it. You know, Justina talked and I talked about, you know, creating a template that's very easy for people to just sign. And that works good for some people who are, you know, just want to make it as easy as possible. But you can also encourage people to add their own personal experiences and perspectives. The legislators really do listen to those personal experiences and perspectives and take them into consideration. And those are the kinds of letters, I think, that they remember more, right? So if everybody is sending in the same letter, that can be effective because it lets your representative know that many of their constituents care about this issue. But if there's all those personal experience and perspective letters, then they really start to feel it and they really, you know, want to be involved in whatever this issue is. Keep it concise. It doesn't have to be very long. It can be short and have a very clear message. And respectful as well. So even though we may have some strong opinions, especially if you're reaching out to, you know, a representative that you're not sure how they feel about this issue that's important to you, we need to be professional and respectful. And as Justina said, utilizing social media to promote the campaign. And you can also even share with permission some of those really impactful letters. And of course, authenticity and passion. I mean, that's something that is in no short supply here in the ECE field. It's one of the reasons that I love working for Every Child California, is that all of you as advocates have this genuine belief in your cause and the passion for positive change. And the more you can get that across in your letter writing campaign, whether you're recruiting people to write letters or sending those letters in to representatives, that really does resonate, and that really does create change. As I mentioned earlier, collaboration and partnerships, when you partner with other relevant organizations that can amplify your reach, your resources, and your expertise. So things like the ECE Coalition, I think, Justina, you told me there was about 43 different organizations represented there.
Yeah, there's 34 organizations that are ECE organizations that are represented through the ECE Coalition. So we work together to create one letter, so one template that we all sign on and send that in.
And then send that on to like all the members of those different organizations too. And so that really does amplify that reach. And so even like thinking creatively about people in your area who may not, they may not have a childcare center or preschool, but maybe they provide services to your families. They could also be very powerful allies in being able to get that message out there. Justina mentioned earlier that strategic timing, coordinating your efforts with the legislative process, the budget process, or even a news cycle. If you have seen a news article recently about a topic that you care about, that might be a good time to leap on the bandwagon and start a letter writing campaign. I think back in the fall, there was a big article in the LA Times about toileting issues in TK. I mean, that would have been a great moment to start a letter writing campaign and send all of those letters in following that big news piece, right? And then, of course, adaptability and flexibility, being responsive to changing circumstances and changing your strategies for different audiences is really important, especially if you're getting feedback from people that they don't know how to write the letter, they don't know how to submit the letter. So how can you make it easier for them in the process? Now, three things that are absolutely required for a letter to be processed and read by a representative are the signature and printed name of the letter writer, as well as the street address, because as Justina said, they have to be a constituent of that representative, or that representative will not read their letter. Justina did mention the idea of bringing a pre-printed postcard or a pre-printed letter to a conference or a meeting and having attendees sign their names to the different letters, because then that's a great way to get a lot of signatures really fast if you're in an area where there are a lot of other like-minded folks at the same time. So you can do it as a letter or even as a postcard.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. How are you all feeling? We can make our stop a little bit early because I know that was not stopping the training, but just to take a pause to see, because I know that's a lot of information and I want to make sure that we're answering your specific questions as well. So if you've got a burning question on your mind, like I've been thinking about doing this letter writing campaign and there's just this one issue that I have a question about, please let us know. Okay, I'm going to continue on, but please feel free to use that chat if you think of something in the meantime. So we talked about how timing is everything a few times throughout this training because it can be so helpful to you and what you're trying to advocate for. So I wanted to put on here, know the deadlines for the support letter. So that's what we were talking about when you're supporting a particular bill and using the support letter portal. All of that information for deadlines for support letters for the committees that we use is in the ECE Voices Toolkit on our website. There's a grid on there that breaks down the Education and Human Services committees for both the Senate and the Assembly and tells you exactly what time before the hearings that you have to have that submitted by. Make it really easy for you. If you want to track hearing dates, use the Every Child California and ECE Voices legislative grid. This is available on the Every Child California website, and I'll make sure that everyone has a link on the resource page, and I'll put it in the follow-up email as well. But the Ledge Grid is going to give you all of that information that you need in one space. You can also use the Senate and the Assembly websites to look up bills. I'm just trying to make it more streamlined for you so you don't have to bounce around to a bunch of different websites. Let us do that for you. and then put it on one page that you can bookmark, which would be our ledge grid page that you can keep an eye on every week. They have hearings usually twice a week, and they're on set days of the week for each committee. And then the Senate and the Assembly have what's called a daily file, and that's on their main page, and it shows what's happening that day. It's like this scrolling information on the front page that says what hearings are happening that day. So it's just kind of a nice resource for you. And then every committee has a page as well. So if you want to do that digging, you definitely can. Again, you can just use our toolkit and our ledge grid page and have everything there at your fingertips. And then just know that support letters are not accepted after the deadline. So if you miss the deadline, wait until it goes through the next committee and send it in. Then it doesn't mean that, you know, you're completely done with it and you can't support it, because you can also call into a hearing and you can be put on officially as support by calling in and saying that you support it. Okay, so this is where I was gonna take a little pause and just see about questions and see if you have any stories to share with us about your own sort of campaigns. I'm not seeing any, but Every Child California does do a lot. So if you're on ECE Voices mailing list or Every Child California's mailing list, when there's important issues, we will send out those emails that have the template letters attached. One way to just get involved with those and pass those on to everyone that you know as well. Okay, so now I'm going to pass the baton back over to Jenny, and she's going to go over forums. So we're switching gears here.
All right, so we're moving on to the idea of hosting a forum for legislators and representatives. And before we really dive into this, what I kind of wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page, you know, this is something that can be whatever your level of comfort or interest is. So, you know, a lot of times we think about a candidate forum as like we're bringing in people who are running for office and they're there, we need a moderator to facilitate a debate, right? And so when we're talking about hosting a forum here, that could be what you want to have going on, but it might also be, you know, an opportunity to raise awareness, to engage specific legislators, to foster a cross-party dialogue with the different representatives in your district, and even with your community members to be able to meet those representatives that they have. And so there's a whole range of topics that this forum can kind of cover. The most important thing to note, I recommend if you are working for a nonprofit and organizing this on behalf of a nonprofit, or even if you aren't, the need to invite candidates from and representatives from all parties, Justina?
Yes. And I can include a link on our resource page that will go over that in detail for you.
Great, thank you. So we're just going to kind of talk about this at like a high level of planning an event where you're going to invite representatives, right? So the first step, just like our letter writing campaign, is defining our purpose and goals. So what is the specific issues? Is there a public policy problem that you're planning to address? And making sure that both the representatives that you invite are aware of that, as well as the people who you invite to come attend this event are aware as well. And really think about that target audience, those key legislators, and think about, you know, those different levels, whether they're local or statewide. You're going to want to assemble your team and secure funding, because if you're trying to put on, you know, an event, you might need a budget for a venue, speakers, travel. And ECE Voices, that's a great area where they can help. If you're working with your lead advocate for your region, working with Justina, there can be funding approval. And she has a whole process to go through that. Just like any other event, you would choose your date, your time, and your location for the forum. Consider those legislator schedules and the sessions that Justina mentioned way back at the beginning when she said, I think, August through December. is when legislators are in their local offices. So those are a really good time to have a local event, and definitely avoiding conflict with holidays or major events. Or, one of the things that I always look at too is different conferences that are happening that are relevant to the field, so when the Head Start conference is coming up, we wouldn't want to schedule an event during that time because we know a lot of the people would want to invite maybe at that conference, right? Selecting a central location that's accessible to the participants, that has the right capacity for your expected audience. If you're planning to bring out 100 different people, you need to make sure you've got a big enough venue for that. And then invite your speakers and invite a moderator who has strong facilitation skills and impartiality. Even if you're hosting like a meet and greet with your representatives, it's important to have someone there who, is ready to introduce the representatives and introduce the constituents who come out to meet them, and just sort of share some of the goals for the event and move the activities along. If you're looking at specific issues, targeting prominent legislators who have authority on the issue, as well as diverse perspectives. In addition to representatives, you can invite other experts and stakeholders who can provide additional viewpoints to the conversation. Think about the format that you want to do and your agenda, whether you want to have that panel discussion, whether you want to have a presentation, Q&A session. And I think just, you went to one back in the fall that had some really great small group breakout discussions.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about what that event was like, the format?
Yes. So in Southern California, you guys might be familiar with James Moses. He works for Child Care Resource Center. He invited probably 5 or 6 local and state legislators and representatives to one of his offices. And we had about 40 people that participated that were early childhood educators. And how he formatted is first a panel discussion. So he put everyone that was a representative at a table at the front. And so the audience could see them all, and they all introduced themselves and told everyone how they got involved in politics and why in this specific area of early childhood education, which was really nice to hear their stories and connect on that level. And then they were able to hear from the audience, and then they decided, okay, we're going to break up into roundtable discussions. So about 5 tables that had a few people that were ECE educators at each, and then a representative set at each one. Each one was designated a topic. So rate reform, family fees, UPK, things like that. And then they would just rotate around so that they each had a chance, the ECE educators and the legislator, to hear what they had to say about that topic and get their kind of concrete takeaways that they could take back to the legislative office and start working on. So it's a really great setup that way to be able to talk about 3 or 4 very specific issues and get everyone's points of view on it without overwhelming them too much. And then we've had a lot of meet and greets. So if you get any emails from us that say meet and greet, it's basically this. So what we're inviting you to is to meet with your local legislators. We'll sit you down in like a boardroom with them. And then we bring talking points, we provide those. So that's something that you could think about if you're interested in setting up some sort of forum, is pre-planned, right? Topics to discuss with those legislators, so that when they come in, it's really fruitful. You can really get down to business on exactly what the issues are that need to be addressed at the state level or at the local level. And you can even give them those talking points to take with them so that they have that with them at the office. So I hope that's helpful.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing those 2 different formats, Justina. I think it's always helpful when we can illustrate it with an example. Next slide. There we go. All right, so the next step is promoting your forum, developing a targeted communication strategy, and really thinking about who is the audience that you're planning to invite, who would most benefit from participating in this forum, or who would even bring valuable perspectives to the forum as well. So you can, again, utilize social media, email outreach, partnering with relevant organizations, and press releases. If you have If you have a friendly contact over at a local news or radio station, just letting them know that you're hosting this event and who you want to invite, that can go a long way. For example, one of the things that we do, Justina is hosting a meet and greet. Well, Jessica Krantz is hosting a meet and greet, one of our lead advocates, later this spring. And so we just did a group in our email database of all of the people who live in cities that are touched by the representatives who are being invited. And so we didn't send that out to our whole statewide mailing list for Every Child California. We're really being very specific about who might actually be interested and able to attend. And so that's what we mean when we say targeted communication strategy, really thinking about who would come and who would benefit from being there. And then next up is the logistics and planning, just having those really clear communications with the speakers, the moderators, and attendees. Having those talking points that Justina mentioned is really helpful. I think at one of your recent events, Justina, you actually made a program that had information on those representatives, their bios, their offices with their contact information, so that attendees could prepare, but then also take that information home to have that direct contact information for the representatives following the event, which I thought was really cool. And then if it's a more structured event where people have different, roles like emceeing, really rehearsing that event flow and identifying potential contingency plans, areas that things could go wrong, and what you'll do if they do go wrong. Like, what if a representative suddenly can't show up that day? What are you going to do to fill that gap in your agenda? Then you can engage the public and media. And so this is a little bit different than promoting the event. This is giving an opportunity for people who maybe can't access it in person to be able to kind of get a sense for what's happening and get some of that same information. And you can do that by live streaming it for a wider accessibility, or even inviting those media outlets to come to the event and provide coverage to spread more awareness throughout the community. You can have online polls, Q&A sessions, social media interaction to go along with the event. Or if you're planning on doing it hybrid and you're able to create recordings that you can then share with your community, that's another way to promote accessibility of your event as well. And then just like with our letter writing campaign, that follow-up is really important. Coming up with a summary or a follow-up to the discussions and recommendations for those legislators, and recommendations for those in your community who come on how they can continue the conversation and continue their advocacy. And then staying engaged with the legislators so that you can advocate for policy change based on the outcomes of that forum. Additional tips, definitely maintaining a neutral and nonpartisan stance through the planning and execution process. You're inviting these representatives into your space. And so being very professional and respectful, regardless of your political stance, is incredibly important. And being mindful of any potential conflicts of interest and disclosing them transparently, both to the representatives, but also to your community as you're promoting the event. Promote civil discourse and respectful dialogue among the participants. I don't think that any of us want to host a forum where everybody is shouting at your invited guests. So just trying to create some sort of like community rules or ground rules for the event is a key to success for sure. And then evaluating the success of it and really doing a debrief after the event with your team, with your fellow advocates, to think about what did you learn and how can that inform your future advocacy efforts. Hosting a successful forum does take a lot of work. It does take a lot of pre-planning, organization, and clear communication. You can follow these steps, adapt them to your specific context. They're kind of a really broad overview of the steps, right? So each step, you're going to have to really adapt to your specific location, the people that you serve, and the issues that are most important to you. But you can host a forum to discuss important issues, and you can contribute to that positive change.
Thank you, Jenny. So we went over a very high level, big forum is what you saw here. But like Jenny said earlier, you can do this at any level. So when it comes to determining if you can do this or not and how big you want it, you'd have to sit down and say, okay, I have this much time and resources and availability of a team that can help me to do a big one like this. But if you wanted to do a smaller one where you have, I don't know, like 20, 30 people come, maybe even less, you can just reach out to your ECE Voices lead advocate at that point and say, I have a location, I have a topic that I'm really interested in. Could you help me with this? And they'll reach out and we'll coordinate together. So, because I know you're working a full-time job, so I can be here on the other end. And I'm contacting the representatives, getting the, information and documents prepared, setting up, if we have a breakfast or something, I can take care of all that stuff so that you guys can have your meeting and you can focus on doing your work during the day while I take care of this stuff, because this is what I do full-time behind the scenes. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, but this is nice to know. If you were to want to have a really big forum, you have step-by-step process of how to do that. So does anyone have any questions about all of this information that we've provided for you? Any comments or questions? We only have a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to review real quick of what we're hearing out in the field right now when I'm attending ECE Coalition meetings, when I'm attending, policy calls and all sorts of things. This is the same information that I provided a couple weeks ago. The legislative process right now is going very slow. There isn't a whole lot of hearings at this moment, so I don't have any bills to say this is really what we're fighting for and we're going to be, going to testify at those. There is going to be a budget hearing on education the end of April. So at that point, you'll start seeing me sending emails and maybe putting some social media posts on where we're looking for people who want to come in to those hearings or call into those hearings to say, we need continued funding for the wins that we had last year. We don't want them to expire in 2025. So we're hearing ensuring parental choice for childcare. So that has to do with UPK, UTK. We want to make sure that our community understands that you are not required to be on a school campus, that you still can go to your community-based organization and your family childcare. Not all parents have a standard schedule. Some of them work evenings and they need that flexibility in their care. We want to allow that. What I'm hearing a lot is eligibility staff wants to be able to meet with the families and kind of assess their whole situation and give them all the referrals and resources they need right there in one stop, instead of asking them to go make multiple stops to get all the help that they need, maybe with food and healthcare. And a lot of farm workers, even to leave the farm, they need to have a reason why they're leaving, and then they have to give that document to the enrollment specialist who has to sign off on it saying that they came there. So when you're asking them to bounce around to different organizations to get everything done, it's too much on them. So that's why they're working on that. We would love to see early intervention for special needs children. We know that Minjabar did have a bill going with Child Care Resource Center during the last session. It was SB 635. It did get a little bit of pushback, but we do expect that to come back. We really want to be able to see that children in all programs can have that early intervention. We want to continue with the family fees being at the 1%, increase our childcare slots, address the staffing ratios in classrooms with special needs children, because what we're seeing is the special needs children really do need some extra attention and maybe some time away. But if you leave the classroom with them, then you're out of ratio. We're having teachers saying, please give us more training to work with special needs children as well. And then as far as the budget goes, no new news here. We know that we're in a deficit. When we had our advocacy day in January, they were basically saying, don't ask us for more money because it's not there right now. And what I'm hearing from advocates is to express to legislators and budget committees that what they have done so far is working. It is benefiting the programs and sharing with them what is working, because if they take it away, then that's gone. So at least we can come to them with, look what happened. It was successful. Continue the success, right? So we can kind of get them on that path of figuring out how to sustain the funding going forward. So I wanted to get that out there. I know we're over time. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. I also want to let you know that our last training for ECE Foundations Advocacy Training is going to be March 5th. Nina Boothie, Every Child California's Executive Director, will be joining us on that training. She'll be giving a legislative and budget update. It's always nice to hear from her because she is so well connected in the community. I would like it to be an interactive session where we will create an actual advocacy plan. So you'll pick one of these advocacy methods that we've gone throughout these weeks and say, this is what I want to do. And we'll walk through a planner together to get you started on it. So at this time, I'll just open it up for any sort of questions and comments that you might have. And if you need to jump off, I understand, but I don't want to leave you hanging. So if you have any questions, let me know.
I just wanted to thank you, Justina, for having these trainings. They're really helpful, and I feel like there should be more people in these trainings so that we know how to advocate. Because if we are in the early childhood, field, we really need to advocate, because I don't feel that there's not enough. How do I want to put it? Like, they don't know the real necessity that early childhood is for people that work and what we really do. So I appreciate you having these.
Thank you. I will put out there that on March 4th, we are doing a collaboration with Head Start California. We're going to be doing a training online from 3 to 4, and it is going to be on the basics of advocacy to prep anyone who is wanting to learn more, but also Head Start is having an advocacy day on March 12th. So it's to prep them to talk to the legislators as well. Nina and I will be presenting at the CAAEYC at the end of April. We're going to have a workshop there on advocacy as well. So we're not going away. We're just going to be putting our time and effort into other forms of getting the information out there. And remember to share those videos on YouTube. That's a great way. So if you know anyone, you just send them a link and they can learn that way as well.
Well, that's what I think I'm going to do with the other liaisons in our agency, is ask if we can look at the YouTube videos so that each of us can work with the families and the teachers that we work with and just make them aware of things. Because like right now that you were talking about the special ed and the ratios, a lot of teachers are getting frustrated, but they need to know that that there's already work in progress, that it's happening, that we're trying to address the issue.
And remember, the statewide master plan for ECE is basically finalized, and they're taking final public comment. They've been sending out an email giving out that date. If you need it, you can email me and I'll give you the date. It's in Sacramento, so if you're in the area and you can go to it, it would be really important to get your feedback on what they're deciding to do.
Thank you.
We also do personalized trainings. We do a lot of LPC meetings where we talk there. So if you ever want me just to talk to your staff or your network, we can put something together on the topic that you're interested in and do that through Zoom.
Thank you.
Well, okay. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, everyone. I hope you have a really lovely evening, and we'll see you on March 5th.